Hello, everyone. This is Dorie Clark, and we are here with our weekly Newsweek interview show, Better. And I am here this week with our special guests, Stuart Crainer and Des Dearlove. They are the founders and leaders of Thinkers 50, which is an organization that ranks every 2 years the world's leading management thinkers. And we're going to be talking to them today about leadership trends for 2023, what they are seeing, what is happening out there in the business world that you need to be aware of so that we can all be better leaders, better professionals, and better people. Stuart and Des, welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Always great to see you, Dorie, and thanks for inviting us on the show.
Thank you so much. We're really glad to have you here. So, first question out of the gate. You all just this week released your list of Thinkers 50 2023 radar thinkers. These are emerging thinkers that you believe have the potential in the future to shape the world of business thinking. We'd love to hear a little bit more about this list. You know, how did you compile it? What does it mean to be a radar thinker? How does one make a mark such that they get noticed in this way? I'm going to kick this one to Stuart first, and then we'll alternate a bit. But Stuart, we'd love to hear your thoughts about who are these radar thinkers?
Yep. So every year since 2016, we've been selecting 30 thinkers who we think are 30 up and coming thinkers, people that all the world of management should start paying attention to, ideally now. Many of them have got books coming out this year. So this is kind of advance warning from us. We got 5,000 nominations for the Thinkers 50 radar, but really we spend our life, our sad and empty lives, perhaps, where we spend our lives talking to people and trying to find out who are the new people, who are the next Adam Grants, who's the next Dan Pink, who's the next Dorie Clark. We're always asking, trying to figure out who the people.
There's only one Dorie Clark.
Oh yeah, sorry, Dorie. But we're always trying to figure out who the people worth listening to and worth reading, and that's really been the point of Thinkers 50 from we started 20 odd years ago. And what we realized that the world was just full of conferences, books, articles, magazines at that time. And that was before the internet was really where people sought their information. A lot of stuff. And we set out to kind of cut through the crap and get to the good stuff that people can read and to make people think, and ideas that can be put to work. I think that's the thing we're always looking out for. We don't want kind of esoteric academic research, even though that's important. But we want research that helps people, helps managers, and helps the world.
That's great. We're here with Stuart Crainer, and in a moment, I'm going to turn to Des Dearlove. We're so excited to hear your perspective. We just want to say hi to everyone tuning in from around the world. So if you are tuning in, please type into the chat box and let us know who you are and where you are tuning in from. And we are taking your questions. For Stuart Crainer and Des Dearlove, they're the heads of Thinkers 50, which ranks the world's leading business thinkers. Now, Des, I'm curious. Stuart was telling us about the Thinkers 50 radar thinkers that have just been unveiled, but I think our audience would love to get a sense of who some of these folks are. Now, obviously, it's a list of, I believe, maybe 30 people. Is that right? So it's too many to name, but perhaps you could tell us a little bit about some emblematic folks and some of the interesting things that they're doing.
I think the first thing to say is that we want this list to be very eclectic. It is deliberately very diverse and very eclectic. So we try to make it a very broad church, and we recognize too that it's an opportunity really to draw attention to some of the new voices in management thinking, people who we hope that if we shine a bit of a spotlight on them, it'll give them an opportunity to really make strides in their careers. Stuart, who comes to mind on the list that this time round?
I like Mark Vletter, Dutch entrepreneur, founder of a number of fast-growing Dutch businesses, and all his businesses have the same edicts of no management. They're all self-managed. He puts holacracy to work. We will throw names at you, so you can check out the thinkers50.com website. It gives you the full list of the radar and all the names and background on the people. I also like Neil Lewis from Cornell. Neil's part of the Action Research Collaborative, which brings academics, practitioners, community members and policymakers together to figure out solutions to problems that afflict the world. I think a lot of the people we feature this time and over recent years are about tackling big issues. And I think that's the focus. The focus has changed in the Thinkers 50. We used to feature thinkers 20 years ago, and their focus was on improving shareholder value or producing more products, selling more products, very straightforward business challenges. But now a lot of the people we feature want to change the world. And that's a huge difference, obviously, but it's really important. It shows you and I think it's true that a lot of the issues afflicting the world could be changed by some of these ideas. Another good guy is Paolo Savage from Oxford, who's got a book coming out called The 4 Workarounds: Strategies from the World's Scrappiest Organizations for Tackling Complex Problems. Really great stuff.
Yeah, staying with Oxford. I mean, you posed the question, Dorie, in your sort of teaser for the show about, the way that leadership is changing and, how we should reinterpret it. There's a guy called Edward Brooks who's also based at Oxford, and his work is at the intersection of character, virtue, and leadership. So this is kind of almost old-fashioned. We're almost, we're a nod back to Aristotle and some of those really old ideas about character and what it is to be a leader. It's not just about what you actually deliver. It's about who you are, and how you show up in the world. And I think that sort of work. So he's leading a project at Oxford, which is called the Oxford Character Project, research project. So it's a real, as you can tell, it's a real mix. As you would imagine too, there's a lot of digital stuff, a lot of people in AI and what we were talking just before we came on, the metaverse. It's a really diverse bunch of people.
That's fantastic. We're here with Des Dearlove and Stuart Crainer from Thinkers 50. We're talking leadership trends, and this is Dorie Clark with Newsweek's weekly interview show Better. And we want to say hi to some of the great friends tuning in from around the world. Type your name into the chat box. Let us know who you are. Katie's here from New Jersey. We've got Christine joining. Carolyn's in North Carolina. Andrea's joining. Joshi, we want to say hi to Azite from Mozambique. Sandy's in Dublin. Zayan is here from Cape Town. Zeke is in San Benito, Texas. Jennifer's here from Wisconsin. Beth from London. Peter's back from Edinburgh. Khaled's in Riyadh. We've got Christine from the sky. And Sushma's here from India. She says, this is the most crucial episode of Better so far. So we love having every single one of you. Thank you for being here. Now, I just want to pick up on a strand that you were talking about. Des, you mentioned a moment ago that there's a lot of development in tech, in metaverse, online things. And so one of the things that I'm curious about, and I'll route this one to Stuart, is Chat GPT. This is an area that has really interesting ramifications for thought leadership. I have played around with it, and the other day I even was sort of typing in about, what, can you write something in the style of Dorie Clark? And, I'm like, how easy can I make this for myself? And ChatGPT is no joke. This is very good. So what does thought leadership mean when a computer can be instantly synthesizing things? How do you think about that? As, I know, of course, that idea creation, that the creation of intellectual property is a crucial part of creating business thought leadership in the world. How do you reckon with this? Stuart, let's hear your perspective first.
I was going to say, sorry, I'm sorry to cut you, but we must all be egotists, Dorie, because I asked it exactly the same thing. I asked it to write a chapter of a book in my style, and it's scary what it did.
Seriously, I know. It may be better at being us than we are.
Yeah.
But I think our belief is that anything that helps people share ideas and collaborate is useful. And I think the jury's out whether it helps people share ideas and collaborate. But I think that's the basic principle we approach all technologies with.
I thought it was interesting too that the musician. I mean, you obviously have an interest in music, Dorie, and performance. The Nick Cave, the singer-songwriter, talking about the ChatGPT thing, said that the thing is, what AI can't do is it hasn't experienced human pain. Mm. So it can't write in the way. Now, which I think there's something to that. I think it's interesting. before it replaces all of us creatives. But I also think that writers for years have imagined themselves in the shoes of others and produced pieces of writing which aren't necessarily based on personal experience. So it's a very interesting time, because I think we all thought that, perhaps foolishly, we thought that as writers and creators, we were somehow safe from this AI stuff, at least for a while. I think we thought that, it can't replicate what we can do. Well, it turns out, and we've done the experiments, and anybody who hasn't tried it really should give it a go. But it turns out it's only just beginning. So it's fascinating. Will it replace thought leadership? Will it be able to synthesize human thought and human concepts? I'm sure it will have a good go.
I was talking to someone this morning, and he said he was skeptical about the future, and particularly in relation to technology. And I don't think you can be skeptical about the future. It's not a good route in life. So we've got to think there are positive forces at work.
That's right. It's coming one way or another. So that's really interesting. Thank you, gentlemen. We just want to say hi to some of our great friends tuning in from around the world. If you're enjoying the conversation, hit the like and the share button so that your friends can benefit from it as well. Cheryl is tuning in from Minneapolis, St. Paul. Joshi's in Uganda. DT's in Rochester. Saying hi to Chelsea in Fort Worth, and Allison in Toronto. Naresh Kumar's in India, and Monica's in Denmark. My man Franz is in Bonaire, Dutch Caribbean. John Luca's in London, and Brooke is in Baltimore. We love having every single one of you. And a great question came in from Adnan. A lot of folks are probably wondering about this as well. I'm going to route this to you first, Des. Adnan says, what are the criteria when nominating people for Thinkers 50? If someone here is a business thinker or an aspiring business thinker, maybe this is something they dream of one day, is to be able to have the level of impact necessary to get it onto the Thinkers 50 list or the Thinkers 50 radar list. What are the things they should be thinking about or working on so that they can be able to do that in the future?
We actually produce 4 different lists, of which the radar, which, as you rightly pointed out, has just come out this week. In fact, the radar list is out. The radar list is much kind of looser in the sense that we rely on the eyes and the ears of people who are in business, but especially people who are already in the Thinkers 50 community. People tell us about the bright young things who are coming through, because we simply can't monitor the entire world. So that list is a bit looser, and it's deliberately eclectic. We cast the net wide. We want it to be, we want to get as many different nationalities and backgrounds as we possibly can. The ranking itself has 10 criteria. So the ranking, which we produce every 2 years, and 2023 is a Thinkers 50 ranking year. So in November, we will be producing or announcing the new ranking. So we think of it in terms of, if you like, 2 axes. So on the one side, you've got the viability of ideas, specifically how rigorously they're researched, how relevant they are to what's going on in business at the time. The reach, we're really interested in how broad they are. Are they, we don't particularly want to, we like research that covers multiple industries. Ideally, it's global as well. It's not just US based or China based or something. So we like it to have reach, and then we like it to be robust as well. So that's on the one side. That's the viability, and then the other thing we try to gauge is the visibility axis. So there are a bunch of things there. We try to measure the influence that people have. So that's in terms of you look at the number of citations that their piece of research gets, which used to be the old-fashioned way of doing it. These days, of course, we have to look to social media. That's been one of the big changes. So the criteria continues to evolve as we go along, but the ranking is a much more kind of serious study, trying to understand who are the most influential people, and how they've reached that position, and what they're doing next, because we do it every 2 years. So if you haven't done any research for a couple of years, you're potentially vulnerable to be replaced by somebody else that's doing some good work.
That's right. Well, that's really helpful. Thank you very much, Des. We're here with Stuart Crainer and Des Dearlove. They are the founders of Thinkers 50, which ranks the world's top business thinkers. And I'm Dorie Clark. This is our weekly Newsweek interview show, Better. And we want to say hi to our amazing friends tuning in from around the world. Feel free to type your questions for Des and Stuart into the chat box. Larry's here from Chicago. We want to say hi to Yama in London. We have Brian from New Jersey, Yukon from California. Jackie's joining from Maryland. We have a LinkedIn friend from Dallas. Stephanie's in Chicago. We have Mary from Katona, New York. And Rudy says bonjour from France. We love having all of you. Now, Stuart, something I was curious about. I was lucky enough to participate in this actually last month, but I know that there is an initiative that Thinkers 50 has done in partnership with MIM Business School in Kyiv. And you have been helping spread positive ideas to help the people of Ukraine during their difficult time. Can you talk a little bit more about this collaboration and how that came about?
Yeah, it's Ukraine's leading business school in Kyiv. Obviously, their work has been decimated by the war. So what they started was a weekly webinar. Their view is that they need the best ideas in the world to rebuild Ukraine after the war. So they have a weekly webinar when they invite people from throughout the world to appear. Dorie, as you say, you appeared. Philip Kotler was on the other week. Alex Osterveld. So lots of people from the Thinkers 50 community have given their time and helped the cause. And they're also raising money to support female entrepreneurs in Ukraine trying to start businesses or rebuild businesses. But what's really interesting there, I think, is that their commitment to ideas. They know that for all the physical decimation, the horrors of wartime, in the end, ideas will be necessary to move the country forward. And their positivity is incredible. I was talking to them yesterday. They invited me to Ukraine yesterday. And I must admit, there's not many occasions I get invited to war zones. But they want to carry on as normal and champion ideas. So they're going to put on a physical event in Kyiv in September. And they're making the point that ideas change the world for the better. And I mean, in the broad sweep of history, that's true. And in the particular case of Ukraine, they want to harness ideas to rebuild their country.
That's really powerful. Thank you. We're here with Des Dearlove and Stuart Crainer of Thinkers 50. This is Newsweek weekly interview show, Better. I'm Dorie Clark. We want to say hi to CL tuning in from Miami, Floret from Dubai, Angelique's in Indianapolis. We have Alberto in Brazil, John from Atlanta, and Sarah from Yemen, Kimani from Kenya, and Jefferson from Brazil. We love having all of you type your questions for Stuart and Des into the chat box. And a great one came in. Des, I'd love to send this one your way from Prashant. And Prashant wants to know, what is one old leadership trait that we all need to unlearn? You all are the masters of business and leadership trends. What are the things we need to clear out and get rid of?
Yeah, interesting. I'm gonna come around on that particular question. I mean, the question you posed in your when you invited us on the show was, how is the scope of leadership changing? And I think there's a good kind of segue from Stuart's point about Ukraine, because I think what's going on at the moment is we are being offered, if you like, there's a polarization of leadership that we can see in the world. So, and in a way, the war in the Ukraine absolutely illustrates that. I think it perfectly illustrates that. On the one hand, you have a leader who's, let's say, using the old-fashioned command and control techniques, and then on the other side, you've got a leader who is all about building, creating collaboration, giving hope to his people, rallying, and again, not necessarily the leader we would have expected to step into that role. So it's a really interesting time. I think the thing to unlearn probably is this sense that there is a way that leaders look, and that leaders have to be decisive always, and they have to be powerful. They have to be commanding. I think that if you like, the heroic leadership myth we don't need another hero. What we need is real people, I think, and real people are heroes when they do the right thing. I think it's fascinating to hear people like somebody like Jacinda Ardern talk about what leadership means to her. Obviously, she's just stepped back from being Prime Minister of New Zealand, but she talked about being kind and strong. And I think leaders can be kind. These things can go together. So we don't need to be. I think we could start to unlearn some of the lessons about being ruthlessly decisive and making decisions in very rapidly. Sometimes actually taking the time to reflect, thinking about thinking things through, being a bit kinder to the people that follow us. I think there's something to be said for that. I think that's the shape of leadership that I'd like to see anyway, moving forward. And I think there are real signs that that's coming through, and perhaps the command and control leaders that we've seen in the last couple of years, perhaps we're moving away from that model.
I think we have to unlearn our assumption that leadership is associated with age. So I'm a 60-year-old white guy, therefore I'm a leader. And I was kind of, why are our leaders older people? And the logic is because they've got more experience. But having more experience in a world which no longer exists doesn't seem to be a great recommendation for someone to be a leader, as far as I can see. And what's wrong with a 30-year-old CEO? The problem is not whether that person can do the job, because they've got the energy, certainly the intelligence to suggest that they can. But what stops 30-year-olds being CEOs is the attitude of other people. And that's what needs to be unlearned. So leadership should be open to all.
It's a really interesting point. Thank you. That's Stuart Crainer. We're here with Stuart and Des Dearlove, and they are the founders of Thinkers 50. If you're enjoying this conversation and you want to never miss one, every week we are doing these Newsweek interview shows. Just go to dorieclark.com. You can sign up for the email list there. You'll never miss an episode because you'll get messages and reminders. And if you want to learn more about the great work that Stuart and Des are doing at Thinkers 50, go to their website, thinkers50.com. You can join their email list so you'll be notified about upcoming events and things that you should know. We also want to say hi to great friends tuning in. Stephen is here from Silicon Valley. We have a LinkedIn friend from Calgary. Miriam is in Malawi. We have Christopher here. We have Christine in Rochester. Petra's in Martinique. We have Tu Dong from Paris, and Rita Marie is here from Ireland, and Natasha Fatma from Paris. We love having all of you. And a question that I am curious about, gentlemen, is when you think about the best leaders that you personally know, people in your own life, not necessarily a Peter Drucker type figure, but maybe just a sort of regular leader that you have encountered. Who stands out to you and why? Is there sort of a personal exemplar you turn to? I will open up the floor for either or both of you if there's someone that comes to mind.
There's a guy called Henry Stewart who is CEO of a company in London called Happy. And Henry is a fantastic guy, huge amounts of energy and integrity. And he gives people power. And every decision is pre-approved. So people used to come to him and say, Henry, can I spend £500 on this? He would say, no, it's pre-approved. Giving people the power and the freedom to do things. And I think the best managers we've come across are people like that. There was a guy we worked with called Mark Sylvester, who was a really, really nice guy who sadly died last year. And we used to go to meetings with him, and he was the very senior guy in the room. And he would sit there and he wouldn't say anything. And eventually we went to a few meetings. He didn't really contribute much. And we said, well, Mark, why aren't you saying anything? He said, well, my people, the people I work with, they're working on this project. I'll say something when I need to, but out of respect for them, when I don't need to, I won't. And I think there's not many managers and leaders have that. Somebody in the chat refers to authenticity, but kind of decency and respect for the other people. And when you see that, it really stands out.
That's a great example, Stuart. Thank you very much. Des, do you want to weigh in on this at all?
Just as Stuart was talking, it just reminded me of one of our radar thinkers from last year, Madupi Taylor Pierce, who's whose kind of mission is to develop leadership capability in Africa. And he's just written a piece, and he said, leaders speak last and listen hardest. Because as soon as the leader speaks, it skews the conversation. So leaders should be able to hold their tongue and actually listen to what's going on in them, and be the last person to speak instead of the first person to speak. So he's very impressive in that sense.
I can point people towards Pia Lauritsen, who's on the radar this time, and she's founder of something called the Question Collective, which is focused on creating a world where people are curious together. And I think the power of questions, which Pia, her work is about, but also Hal Gregerson at MIT, the power of questions is really important, kind of and still underrated, I think.
That's terrific. Thank you. A terrific question came in from Miriam, and she wants to know, gentlemen, what will differentiate a successful leader from an unsuccessful one in 2023 amidst all the transition and transformation that the world has experienced? Could you paint us a picture of a successful versus an unsuccessful leader and what that might look like? Des, let me turn to you first with that question.
Okay, well, I'm gonna stick with my thesis about kindness and about being strong but being kind. I think it's about maintaining the humanity. I think one of the big changes that's going on that we see is, once upon a time, leaders used to tell us that they had all the answers. And once upon a time, we maybe even believed that. But the world is changing so rapidly now that it's not even feasible that people can have all the answers. So I think what's coming through, we're beginning to understand that leaders are people who say, I don't have all the answers, help me. I want to do the right thing. I want people to come with me, but I don't necessarily have all the answers, and I'm not necessarily going to pretend that I have. So I think successful leaders this year will be people who understand and look into the eyes of the change and the uncertainty, and embrace that to some extent, but also provide reassurance, are kind, but that doesn't, as I say, it doesn't mean that they're not strong. They make decisions when they need to make decisions. I think the people that will come unstuck are people who still tell the world that they know the answers and that they know, and we've seen one or two leaders who do that. I think we know who we're thinking of.
I think there's been an emphasis on solutions, getting quick solutions, and no examination of the underlying problems. So I think the leaders who succeed in the future will be those who don't follow instant quick solutions, but dig into what the underlying problem is and work with people to understand the underlying problem and then tackle it.
Rather than the quick fix.
Yeah.
Those are great.
Hopefully followers have an appetite for a longer, for people who are prepared to do that and not just look for a quick fix.
Yes, I think that's a really excellent point. We want to say hi to our amazing friends tuning in from around the world. Cameron's here from Rhode Island, Gianluca from London. We have Benaz from Iran, Christine from Hershey, Pennsylvania, Katya from Costa Rica, Cynthia's in LA, Immaculate is in Dubai, Dana's in Harrisburg, Sergio from Peru, Ahmad is here, Joao is here, and Hussein is in Egypt. We love having all of you. Thank you for tuning in. And gentlemen, we have time perhaps for one more question. This one comes from Anna in New Hampshire, and she wants to know, what's the best way to assemble an eclectic blend of ideas into a single harmonized purpose? I can imagine that this might be especially true if you are a leader in a corporation, for instance, where there's a million things you're doing, your business has to, create projects, launch initiatives, everybody is doing their own thing, and yet somehow you have to create a sense of communal purpose. If you are a leader in today's society, how do you actually take all these disparate strands and unite them into something meaningful? What would be your advice?
I don't think you need to. Because I think historically that's what we'll look to leaders for. One of the leaders I admire and spent time with is Jiang Ruimin, who's the CEO of Haier, Chinese white goods company, biggest white goods company in the world. I've been to the company a few times. Des and I have both talked to Jiang Ruimin, really interesting philosophical guy. You try and figure out what's happening in this massive company, it's impossible. And it's not because of the Chinese culture that makes it difficult, but there's thousands of things happening. That people have got the freedom to set up their own businesses, take their own initiatives. So actually allowing the mess, or what we would see as the mess, and that's why I found Paolo Savage's work about scrappy organizations, being willing as a leader to let all these flowers bloom is actually the big challenge of our times. Not making them, not bringing them all, not necessarily bringing them all together.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think just as a final thing, Reed Hastings, who actually has just stood down or is standing down from CEO of Netflix and was obviously the co-founder of Netflix. We spent some time with him, and the culture at Netflix is very much, you do what you want to do. You don't have to please your boss. You place your own bets. They trust people to make their own decisions. In fact, that, you know, if you can't handle making your own decisions and you're looking to pass the buck up, you're not going to fit in at Netflix. I'm not saying they've got everything perfect, but it's that same thing. It's trusting people and allowing the organization to be messy in order to be creative.
So interesting. Really great points here. This is Dorie Clark with Newsweek's weekly interview show, Better. We've been speaking with Des Dearlove and Stuart Crainer. They're the founders of Thinkers 50. If you want to learn more about the organization and the work they do, check them out at thinkers50.com. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. And Des and Stuart, thank you both for being here.
Our pleasure, Dorie. Really nice to speak to you.
Thank you all, and see you next week.